Hello, welcome back. I'm Dr. Robin Kelly, a family doctor concerned about the impending and prevailing rollout of 5G, as well as the cumulative effect of the non-ionizing radiation from Wi-Fi and cell phones, etc. Today's talk is called the Precautionary Principle Paradox, or the 3P problem, which makes it 4 Ps, I suppose. And I'm reading it a bit, so I can keep on track. So I hope that's acceptable. So we start now. We are in the midst, certainly here in New Zealand and in Victoria, Australia, of the most extreme enactment of the precautionary principle in living memory. The enforced lockdown, isolation and masking of a healthy population to save the lives of a few is certainly taking the precautionary principle very seriously. And many would say necessary compliance with United Nations educational and scientific organization, which is UNESCO, 2005 definition of the precautionary principle, which says when human activities may lead to morally unacceptable harm, that is scientifically plausible but uncertain, actions shall be taken to avoid or diminish that harm. So in March 2020, we certainly knew next to nothing of this virus. Was it natural? Was it from the Wuhan labs? Was it indeed a weapon? Computer modelling from Imperial College, and indeed by our own computer scientists here in New Zealand, suggested it was not only very contagious, but deadly. Worst case scenario, tens to hundreds of thousands dying in our respective countries. A complete collapse of our health services was imminent. All this was scientifically plausible and possible justification for actions to be taken to avoid or diminish that harm. And the actions indeed were extreme. We now know a lot more about the coronavirus, COVID-19, indeed the most studied virus in human history. But we still don't know a lot. We now know that there are new strains mutating that are different, seemingly not as dangerous, but that there are also disturbing chronic post-viral effects. We also know that only a tiny percentage of folk under 65 are at risk if they don't have pre-morbid conditions, as they would have been with colds and flu. So the science is far from settled, and far less settled than is being depicted on our corporate news sources. And for 99% of us, it is not the virus that has affected our lives so much, but the effects of this precautionary principle in action. A drastic change in how we interact with people, masking, social distancing, job losses, social unrest, anxiety disorders, depression, travel restrictions, etc., etc. You all know this and you're all living this. And more than this is the possibility that these restrictions will continue indefinitely, possibly on and off. And the health benefits of these restrictions have to be assessed as essential. And any downside, i.e. economic, mental health, delayed diagnosis, etc., presumably less important. So how strange, bizarre even, that those calling for the precautionary principle to be applied to the rollout of 5G, like myself, are not seen as sensible, preventative, health-conscious pillars of society, but instead are name-called, trolled and gaslit as conspiracy theorists and tinfoil hat wearers and you name it. Especially weird as the science showing harm from existing Wi-Fi and cell phones is far more than just scientifically plausible but uncertain. And for 5G, of course, with a complete absence of independent health risk studies, it's not only uncertain but completely absent. And despite journalists, health department officials, and unbelievably our own Royal Society media wing reciting fake proclamations about 5G's safety profile, quoting the international agency ICNIRP, which is funded in part by our own taxpayers, and whose website, ICNIRP's website, includes a page disclaiming any legal responsibility for health or other harm from what they proclaim. And our health department quotes this website back to us as a source of health information. And that's pretty odd, to say the least. And even more weird as we cover our mouths and noses, and not our heads perhaps, the largest ever experiment on our planet is being enacted. The rollout, if that's the term, for the launching of the first few hundred of the planned 100,000 satellites to encase our globe, emitting radiation, yes, non-ionizing radiation. I have to keep saying that for the trolls. Emitting this radiation to every centimetre of our globe, and passing through the viral and bacterial microbiome of our troposphere, the microbiome of our planet, onto our microbiome and into the microbiome of every living plant or animal, and also onto our Earth's rich bacterial humus, disrupting along the way the subtle natural human resonances vital for life on this planet for over 4 billion years. Interesting enough, without one single risk assessment. So my precautionary principle is this: always check the sources of any article or scientific paper, or indeed any health department proclamation. Examine the makeup of any committee being dogmatic about health issues. If there is name-calling like conspiracy theorists, realise that this is narcissistic projection from the name callers. Question everything, follow the money, and live a creative, safe, loving life away from the unhealthy noise of unreasonable and manipulative men and women. And if society agrees that this present COVID-defeating form of the precautionary principle enactment is indeed justified to continue, so be it. But then we also need to get real about the dangers of electrosmog and our radiation environment, and the untested rollout of 5G frequencies. This time it's not just to protect primarily folks at my age and older, but to protect our children and grandchildren, and indeed our planet. It's time for us all to wake up. It's time for the politicians to wake up. It's time for all of us to think logically and compassionately about this. See you later. Bye-bye. Thank you.